Hello, and welcome to episode 108 of Prose. This week, meet two of the four women who reign over the seasons and ease an old woman's passing. Please go follow the show on social media under @ProsePodcast across all platforms. If you are enjoying the show, it would be amazing if you could just go click that 5-star button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this. It really helps out a lot. For easiest access to the show, subscribe using whatever podcast catcher you enjoy. Lastly, but most assuredly not leastly, I'd love for you to check out the Prose Patreon page at patreon.com/ProsePodcast and consider supporting the show there. Not only will I be eternally grateful, you'll get some fun swag out of the deal. Thanks for listening. Let's get to the tale, shall we? This week we have the Summer Sovereign and the Winter Wight, and Ethel, Elaine, Endelle, Ericson. Enjoy. The Summer Sovereign and the Winter Wight by Jared I. McGee. Does the dance ever get tiring to you, Winnie? Don't call me that. You know I hate that. Does the dance ever get tiring to you, Winifred? You know it does, Sonara. I know this is our dominion and our duty and all that rot, but I can't help but wish we could pause, but for a moment. I would love to see the forest in the deeps of winter. It would be so very special were we to sunbathe by the Lugano or ice skate hand in hand on the Lac de Joie. Don't you think, sister? I hate warmth. You can't stand the cold. Why must you always lay out impossibilities, sister? I know. Things are rather difficult when it comes to we two spending quality time together, aren't they? Still, I think that I'd have so very much more fun with you compared to Carpo or Thalo. Those two are lukewarm in all the worst ways, and they are celebrated to such a sickening extent by the humans. You are celebrated just as much, if not more, Sonara. Don't begrudge them their celebrations and worship. Let them have their due. So understanding, Winifred. This from the one who loathes her worshippers. I don't loathe them. They just celebrate all the wrong things for all the wrong reasons. They even mislabel me and my champions. Father Christmas, Krampus, Christ, Sol Invictus. These men are not my own. And Wight? Maybe in the old days. Maybe when I was Yuharti, or Uila, or any other thing that is what I am. Even their languages misremember me, misworship me. The Winter Wight looked out the window toward the valley of Danaan. The lake shone, the sunshine streaming through the numerous windows on the side of their cottage. Sonara's spun gold hair shimmered and nearly hurt the eyes when reflecting the springtime sunlight. Thalo was out showing off today. It was her time after all. Carpo was no doubt off warming up next to some lad from the nearby village she'd coaxed over with spice and promises of a better harvest next year. But Sonara's damned hair. It was so beautiful it hurt. It literally hurt Winifred. The shining gold was made all the more striking by the Summer Sovereign's deeply tanned skin. Something akin to the nearly burned honeyed toast that Morozko used to make for the four girls when they were small, before Winifred had come into her power. The sapphires Sonara called eyes caught the light too, sending beams of Persian blue wherever she looked, and the shock of purest white from her smile finished off her look. There was no doubt why the Sovereign was the most celebrated of the four sisters. Thalo was vibrant but mercurial. Carpo was a bit drab but carried a sincere warmth to her. Sinara was unmitigated beauty and brightness. Winifred? She was cold. She had ivory skin and deep chestnut hair that looked jet black in most light. Her eyes matched her hair. And here at the end of her time of dominion, the Winter Wight looked more like the monsters to which her title had come to refer, rather than the terrible dark beauty that took the world by storm when Carpo was done flirting with the night and allowed her to take the reins of the world. Here on the edge of Thallo's End and Serana's ascendancy, Winifred wasn't exactly waifish or ugly. She was, however, tired and even paler than normal, and hungry, and far too hot, and, well, here before her seasons of rest, she just wasn't comfortable, nor was she herself. I'm telling you, Winifred, you'd love to stroll down the Avenue des Champs-Élysées, the men's eyes wide and temperature soaring, eyeing all the flesh bared to the sun, yours included. I would burn. We would protect you. No, sun worshipper, in the heart of the summer seeks a pale brunette. Tan, buxom, blue-eyed blondes are the order for your time, sweet sister. Variety is the spice of life. Their eyes will find you exotic. Serana, we both know I will stay here in the valley and sleep and recuperate. This is your time, sister. Embrace it. Reign in all your strength. I have not, nor shall I ever resent you for it. Not truly. We are not meant to be together, save when we are resting here in the cottage. I'll see you in no time. We both know how impatient Carpo is to horn in on your time abroad. But Winifred, I want you to see more of the world. Carpo and Thallo both come out with me, often, all the time. They love it. You would too. Why don't Serana? Go. Revel in the worship and attention. Barasa knows you thrive when the eyes of the world's men are upon you in adoration. Let the sun bow to you and your own light, sister. But Winifred, Serana, go. With that, the Winter Wight turned her back on her sister, looking out across the Danann. The Summer Sovereign did not plead anymore, simply grabbing her light shift and walking out into the torrential sunlight. The other sisters wouldn't be back anytime soon. The Sovereign was correct that they prefer to stay out and pop in and out of the mortal world alongside their warm-weather kin. They would show up in the cottage eventually, but only from time to time and not for very long. The Wight took a deep breath and sighed with relief. She would take this time to herself to prepare for the deeps, still so very far off. The dance would go on for the foreseeable future. Maybe one of these revolutions the Wight would join the Sovereign. Maybe. Maybe one of these days the dance would end. No, she would never join Serana. Their worlds were incompatible. The end? No one knew the end. Winifred the Winter Wight drew the curtains as her sister Serana the Summer Sovereign was entering into the valley proper. The cottage was bathed in half-light with the closed curtains, reminding the Wight of the early sunfalls of her dominion, bringing her the peace that darkness brings. Thank you for listening to The Summer Sovereign and the Winter Wight by me, Jared I. McGee. Please stick around for our second story this week, where we will stare death in the face. Ethel, Elaine, Endelle, Ericson. A short story by Jared I. McGee. Everything hurt so badly. Ethel could hear the growing cacophony of sirens from somewhere. They seemed far off, but growing closer. She was on the ground. There was her son Eric. His face was blurry. Her eyes seemed not to be working. There was Jess. Jessie? Jessica? Eric's wife. Her daughter-in-law. Why couldn't she remember what Jessie preferred to be called? Jessie, yes, that's it. Her head swam, and all she wanted was sleep. Also in the distance, she heard her son pleading. Stay awake, Mama. Please stay awake. As darkness began to creep in from the corners of her vision, Ethel recalled the day. Eric and Jessie were so proud of their Ergo Baby 360. It had cost a whopping $220, as they had it customized beyond the already impressive features that come on the $180 model. But Ethel didn't mind one bit. This was her somewhat belated gift to them upon the birth of Constance Ethel Ericson. Such a name! And Ethel had had a shout-out to boot. Her little granddaughter broke the E-name traditions. Ethel had grown up Ethel Elaine Endelle. She loved her triple E's. When she was a little girl, she thought the repetitive vowel sounds made her sound like a fairy princess come from another land. So when she'd married Elijah Ericson, it was just too perfect. She switched Endelle for Ericson, and they immediately began to build their family. Eric, Everett, and Elizabeth came in quick succession, and the Ericsons carried on that vowel-centric naming, holding fast to the E-heavy tradition. Eric and his bride had settled relatively close to Ethel after they'd lost Elijah a few years back to pancreatic cancer. Eric was a true firstborn, and he just couldn't stand the thought of his mother living alone. Everett was off living his dreams on the West Coast, and Elizabeth was too busy building a career in the military. So Eric relocated to be close to Mom, despite his hatred of the city. When he graduated high school, he had made a beeline for more rural areas. His and Jessie's decision touched Ethel, and she hated to feel like she had somehow burdened them or sidetracked their plans to see to her. Still, having them so close was a blessing. When little Connie was born, Ethel was downright elated. The least she could do to make sure her son and daughter-in-law had a wonderful life amid the concrete and high-rises was look after Connie. Ethel had had dogs that kept her busy and rather active, but they'd passed away before Elijah's death, and she'd not had the heart to adopt a new dog. Her pain from both the loss of her husband and their dogs they'd shared for so many years prevented her from striking out with a new little one. Connie, however, was a wonderful diversion from what was quickly becoming Ethel's rather boring attempts at staying active. Mahjong, puzzles, walking group, and bridge tournaments were only so exciting. And when she repeated them week after week after week, what little excitement and enjoyment there was there dulled. So she'd arranged her weekly doings to ensure that she could watch over Connie for the majority of the week. Sure, she had to let Connie have a sitter now and again when she had errands or necessary appointments that kept her from the little girl, but that was far more the exception than the rule. She and Connie spent their days playing learning games, watching Sesame Street reruns, and generally trying to expand the infant's horizons. Ethel knew from learned experience that little ones were sponges, and it's never too early to let a child experience French or try their hand at math or paint a picture. Day after day, they created new worlds of awareness and exposure for the child. The best part of the day, though, was their walks together. They'd roll out of Ethel's small efficiency apartment, stroll 2 blocks, and then enjoy a meandering path through the second largest park in the city. Connie would ooh and goo at the passing dogs, the chirping birds, the rambunctious squirrels. Everything interested the baby. The walks were vastly improved when Ethel strong-armed Eric and Jessie into letting her purchase them the Ergo Baby 360. Their Walmart stroller worked well enough. But Ethel liked the idea of having Connie securely fastened against her body, either facing inward, giving the baby comfort in her closeness to her grandmother and allowing her to nap, or facing outward, giving Connie the chance to pore over all those dogs and birds and squirrels. Ethel refused to hear of buying a lesser product and put her foot down that they would have it embroidered with Connie's name when the woman had realized that was an option. This afternoon, though, was different. Not so different, but she was feeling extra good. Connie was feeling extra happy. They were huffing and puffing along the trails with a bit more vigor and verve than usual. The two of them sharing big, beaming smiles as they made their way among the greenery and paths. Connie was facing outward today, and she was enjoying the endless visual stimuli. It was the end of the walk that shifted their worlds. In her revelry and happiness, Ethel didn't see that the light had changed. For someone so abundantly careful, it was an oddity, indeed, that she strode into the crosswalk without looking both ways or checking the walk signal. When she heard the jolt of a horn and the scream of brakes, everything slowed. She'd always heard that happened when the world crashes down around you, but she thought it a cliche or some Hollywood whole cloth. Nope. The mid-size white four-door sedan crept toward Ethel and her granddaughter, clearly unable to stop as it approached from her left. Ethel reacted in the same molasses as the car. She turned her right shoulder, putting her back to the car, and she hunched down, enveloping Connie with her body as best she could. The Ergo Baby 360 carrier's padding squished more tightly around the baby as Ethel collapsed in on her. Connie was in the beginnings of a fearful cry. Then lights, darkness, pain. So much pain. Ethel didn't know when other people showed up. She thought she could feel the straps of the Ergo Baby 360 still around her shoulders and pressing against her belly, but she couldn't hear Connie. She tried to call out for the baby, but nothing came out of her throat but a rasp. When her son finally showed up, she thought that was a dream. The sirens were dizzying, even though they sounded like they were well across town. Her head hurt. Eric was saying something. He wanted her to stay awake, but my lands, she was exhausted. Honey? Connie? Connie? She finally managed to breathe out. Eric heard her and gestured emphatically to the side. Jessie swam back into Ethel's view, and Connie was there in her mother's firm embrace, though the infant was wailing. Mom, she's fine. She scratched a bit, and will have some bruising, but she's fine. You saved her, Mama. Her son had begun to cry. Jessie was already sobbing. So much sadness amid this celebration of her grandbaby being all right. Seemed strange to Ethel. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I messed up. We were just having such a good day. Ethel thought she said. But she wasn't terribly sure what was coming out and what was disappearing into increasingly heavy breaths. Mom, don't apologize. You can't. Eric's voice broke and he began to wail alongside his wife and child. The three began to dim into the mists that were taking over her vision. Ethel smiled, though, as she saw the scuffed-up baby reaching for her grandma, as she saw her daughter-in-law looking upon her with brimming eyes full of love and concern, as she saw her son loving in such a way as only a good man with a good heart can. She smiled and allowed her eyes to shut. How she loved those three. Thank you for listening to Ethel, Elaine, Endelle, Ericson by me, Jared I. McGee. All music and sound effects you have heard throughout episode 108 come from YouTube's royalty-free audio library or the always amazing freesound.org. Occasionally, I put my own creations in there for fun, too. Everything is being used under CC 01.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication licenses. That does it for Prose this week. Our next full episode will come out in 2 weeks' time. Please do consider sharing the podcast with someone you think might enjoy these bi-weekly journeys together. As you continue about your day, I hope that you'll remember to love those around you, tell them that you do, and embrace this life as it is, always, stranger than fiction. Thanks for listening.